Home sellers, it is really painful when an offer fails to come together. But what's even worse is when it comes together and then it dies on the way to closing. Just horrible, horrible, and usually avoidable. We've sold over 2,500 homes, roughly 50 times more than the average realtor. And today, I'm going to walk you through 3 contract phase mistakes that cost sellers the most money in 2026. This is how we do it. So stick around and we'll show you how to stay in control all the way to the closing table. All right, here we go. Welcome to Talking Realty, the podcast for home sellers who want to make more money, save time, and avoid headaches. I'm Glen, realtor and founder of the Ohio Property Group, where we do the same things as traditional realtors, but instead of charging 6%, we charge a low, flat fee. So you keep a lot more money and you still get better results. Check out the free seller tools at talkingrealty.com. And if you love the show, hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get to it. Home sellers, last time we talked about the 3 most expensive mistakes that home sellers make in 2026, and all of them applied to the time before the house goes on the market, or what we call launch day. But today, I want to talk about the avoidable, predictable mistakes that sellers make to create problems after you get the deal under contract. These are the real heartbreakers because you can see the finish line, and just like a desert mirage, your closing turns into vapors. Well, not today. Today, we're going to get you armed and ready to go so you can swerve right around those deal-killing potholes. Here they are. First is failure to prep properly and thoroughly. Second is assuming that the friendly buyer's agent or anybody in the buyer's camp is there to help you. And then finally, the failure to correctly negotiate the buyer agent commission. Today's first mistake is the failure to prep the property properly. Now, I know this sounds like a pre-launch mistake, which it is, but the problems related to this mistake many times show up after you get it under contract, well after you launch. So yes, the problem was created before launch, but the consequences show up at the worst possible time. So this is where things like decluttering and cleaning and repairing combine. It goes back to a handful of core truths. Truth number 4, buyers look for reasons not to buy. And we've talked about that one to death here, is that buyers are consistently out there scouring the market. And most of them who are, well, anybody who's looking for a home to live in, they're looking for one property amongst the tens or thousands or hundreds of properties available to them. They need to narrow it down to the one that would be suitable. So in order to do that, the process isn't one of selecting the perfect house. It's about eliminating all the houses that are not perfect. Therefore, truth number 4, buyers look for reasons not to buy a house. Truth number 9, how you do anything is how you do everything. So one small mistake or one missed dirty drawer would potentially cost you that buyer, because they're going to assume that if you didn't clean the drawer, well, maybe there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you didn't do. And then number 17, truth number 17, if it looks like work, it's a turnoff. This is about failing to prep to the point where it looks easy to maintain. So this is sort of a not too well kept secret, but if you have a buyer roll up to the perfect house and all they see is weekends spent cleaning or doing yard work or something like that, it's not going to be nearly as attractive unless they're one of those weirdos who's really into that stuff. There's not enough of those out there, though, I promise you. But prepping the right way increases trust and perceived value. And above all, it keeps buyers in the game longer. In other words, you give them fewer and fewer reasons, hopefully no reasons, to eliminate your property. Now, we can't necessarily eliminate all of the reasons a buyer might knock your property off the list. What I'm aiming for are the ones that are predictable, the ones that are avoidable, and not cleaning, not prepping, and not fixing and repairing and decluttering and doing all the things that we recommend before you launch is a great way to make sure your property gets knocked out in an early round. So imagine, for example, you go and you're looking at this house. You've heard that the sellers are moving to buy a larger place. Okay. So when you get there, maybe on paper, this looks like the perfect house. But you get there and you start poking around and you notice that the closets are so full that you can't see the walls or the floor. Every drawer, every cabinet you open is absolutely crammed full. And when you do move anything, there are kind of little dust bunnies behind them. Maybe you can see where it was sitting before you moved it. In one room, there's a cracked light switch cover. Okay, 15-cent problem, but it's there. And there's a light bulb out in the kitchen, and the pantry handle door is a little bit loose. Like, all right, just like 2 seconds to tighten that screw. And then the garage, of course, is way too full. You can't park a car in there, much less two cars, as it says on the sheet. It's a 2-car garage, but you can't get even a moped in there. You might have to Google that depending on how old you are. And you can see leaves sticking out at the top of the gutters. Okay, so in and of themselves, none of these are fatal. Right? This is a few minutes in most cases work. Maybe the gutters will take you a little bit longer. But let's try this again. Let's hit the rewind button. And now you're going to pull up to that same house, same sellers. Now, they're bursting at the seams, right? They're moving to get a larger place. This is what the word on the street is. So they got a lot of stuff, because if they didn't have a lot of stuff, they wouldn't need a larger place. Okay, so this, you filed it away, and you can certainly understand why the sellers would need to get a bigger place. So you're going to roll up again. This is cut number 2. You're going to roll up and you're going to see the same house with the same sellers. But this time, every drawer, every cabinet, every closet you open is not only nearly empty, but it's spotless. Every room has just the basic minimal furniture. Shelf spaces are maybe a third full or less. There's a lot of open space on all those shelves. Every table and counter and desk has, again, the bare minimum of items, if anything at all, on them. All the bulbs that are in the light fixtures, not only are they working, but they all match, right? We don't have some daylight, some soft, one weird blue one. We don't know what that's about. And the garage looks like you could hold a bowling tournament in there, or a dance party. That sounds like more fun. Actually, they both sound like fun. Who are we kidding here? And then you see, when you walk around outside, there are gutter guards installed on all the gutters, especially those second-story ones. Ooh, those are painful to get to. And then on the counter, when you circle back through and you're getting ready to decide what to do, you find, laying on the counter, which is almost entirely empty, a red file folder, right? A big old file folder, and it's got 5 years worth of HVAC servicing receipts. You've got a chimney inspection where somebody came out 2 weeks ago, cleaned the chimney and gave it a clean bill of health. You've got manuals to every appliance in the entire house, along with warranty information and copies of all the receipts, when they bought it, where they bought it, how much they paid for it, the serial numbers. Now, same house, I want you to tell me, how do you feel about this particular house? And how do you feel about these sellers versus version 1? Now, version 1 didn't commit any horrible sins. They just failed to prep. And that erodes trust instantly. When you fail to do the easy to see, inexpensive stuff, buyers will probably rightly assume that you also skipped all the hard to see, expensive stuff. And then they're going to run away, or unless they have to have this house, they're going to lowball you, right? You're not going to get their best foot forward because they're not afraid of losing this house. Prepping your house before you launch has a disproportionate ROI for your time, for your money, for your efforts in terms of sales price, inspection issues, speed of the sale. This is not theory. This is fact. And let me tell you where it really, really, really shows up is, let's say you do get a deal together and now we're marching toward closing. First of all, you have burned almost all the trust you have with these folks. They don't believe you've been good caretakers of their future home. So what are they going to do when it comes time to inspect? They're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to get the most picky inspector they can find. They're going to get somebody out to look at that chimney, somebody to look at the roof. They're going to have somebody come out and look at the HVAC, not just the general home inspector. Or they're going to start with the general home inspector, and then they're going to add on all these other inspections, maybe even ask for an extension. And when it's all said and done, they're going to have a long list of things that need to be dealt with in this house. They're going to find out what you already knew, which is you had a lot of deferred maintenance. Now, if they find out that you did all the hard stuff and skipped all the easy stuff, they're probably going to be scratching their heads. But we know from experience that many times that's not the case. If you skip the easy stuff, you probably skipped all the hard stuff. So this is a great way to invite another round of negotiations. Once they get that inspection report back, fully expect them to copy everything they found, forward it to you and say, hey, fix all these things or give us another 5-figure sum off of the property. It's not fun, and all of it could have been avoided for a whole lot less before you launched. But this could, and very often does, kill deals after they're under contract. Now you have to go back on the market and explain to people why you're back on the market. And there's no way to sugarcoat the fact that they found a bunch of stuff wrong with your house during inspections. We do our best, but quite honestly, we typically pause. When it's my listing and this happens, we pause right there and say, you know what, before we go back on the market, let's address all this stuff. Let's just do it while we're not facing showings, while we're not facing a contract or a deadline. Let's just stop and fix all this before we get back out there. And we have a whole rebound process that focuses solely on what did they find and how do we address it. Whether we fix it or not, we're still going to address it because it's not like it's going away. A $300 cleaning can be worth thousands of dollars during the offer, and it can also save you thousands of dollars during the inspection phase. If you really want to go crazy on this, pick up our prep course. It's called Living to Listing. We'll put it in the show notes. I'll walk you through every single phase of prep. And I know this is dirty, gritty, boring stuff, but it is really, the return on investment is crazy when you do it right. Hey folks, almost every seller I know has at least a few questions about the process, which is why we offer a totally free, no obligation, one-on-one strategy call for anyone with a property to sell in Ohio. On that call, we're going to help you plan your listing launch. We're going to nail down your price. We're going to make sure you're ready for offers and inspections and appraisals and hopefully help you get a bidding war off the ground. Check the show notes, the YouTube comments, or just head over to talkingrealty.com and book your free call right now. Seriously, hit pause, go do it now, and I'll talk to you soon. Let's get you on the right track. All right, back to the show. Mistake number 2 for today is assuming that the buyer agent, the bank, or the title company will be your friend and they'll take care of everything throughout the closing. I hear this all the time. Usually it's the buyer's agent. So we'll get a seller who's for sale by owner, and I'm following up with them to see how things are going. And they're telling me that, I think we got this thing under contract, or we're getting it under contract. And then naturally, since we do this sort of work for a living, I'll shoot them a low flat fee and say, listen, for X dollars, I'll wrap up your contract for you and I'll get you all the way through to closing. I'll look out to you. Now, you know what? The buyer agent said they're going to handle all that. Oh, I'll bet they did. Or the lender said they're going to handle all that. Or the title company said they're going to handle all that. Well, no disrespect to the buyer agent, the title company, or the lender, but they each have a job to do. And that job is not to make sure that you safely, securely, and intactly, if that's a way you can say that, get to the closing table. All right. Their loyalty is not to you. None of them are loyal to you. All right. First of all, let's take the buyer's agent. Let me think. In the title is the buyer's agent. Okay. One of the most financially dangerous assumptions you can make is that the buyer's agent is going to somehow look out for you on the way to closing. They will not. Not only does the buyer agent only work for the buyer, but they are duty bound, right? They don't have a choice legally. In the buyer agent's case, if you're asking them a question, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? They don't even have to tell you that, hey, what I'm about to tell you is completely biased because I'm working for my client, because it's right in the name, buyer's agent. So they can look you right in the eye and tell you to do something that is 100% against your interests. So keep that out. This is also true, like I said, of the lender and the title companies. The bank works for the bank. The appraiser, the inspector, they all work for, you guessed it, the buyer. Every one of those people involved was hired and paid for by the buyer. So their loyalty is to those people, to that camp of people, not to you. The title company works for whoever hired them. And very often, if you're not in the driver's seat on this, it's not you. It's the buyer or their agent. And they've probably built a lot of loyalty, either over the course of time or through a financial relationship where they get, kickbacks or something. All nice people. All of these people are wonderful, nice people, and they all want to keep the deal moving. That part is true. However, that's where all the common goals stop. If you're the buyer, your job is to get the best deal you possibly can, all the terms, everything weighted in your favor. If you're the seller, is that what you want? No. You want the highest prices. You want the easiest terms. So you and the buyer have, the only thing you have in common is that you both want to get to the closing table. They just want to get there for a whole lot less money. So not only do these people not work for you, they can't work for you, because the minute they start advocating for you, they're working against their client. And that's not how buyer agency works. So that's one reason we never practice dual agency, working for the buyer and the seller, because I cannot serve two masters. I don't know how people pull it off. In fact, I know how they pull it off, and it's usually terribly, because essentially they just become paper pushers. So when an agent becomes a dual agent, very often they're making a lot more money, and they're not allowed to advocate for either buyer or seller, meaning that all questions have to be answered neutrally. You can't strategize against one, because now you're violating the terms of dual agency. It should be illegal. It should be, but it isn't. So let me explain why this mistake is so expensive. Beyond the fact that you're not going to have not only no representation, you're going to have whatever the opposite of that is, anti representation from the buyer's camp, but they have no incentive to lower your costs, because when they do, their buyer loses. No bueno. They will choose very buyer-friendly people along the way, like the lender, the title company, the inspector. They're going to do everything they possibly can. And those in-house title companies, I have harped on this for years, but they're going to charge you as much as they possibly can get away with, because they know you didn't make that choice. They have no reason to impress you. So the buyer agent doesn't care how expensive the title fees are for you, the seller, because that's not their problem. So contingency deadlines, anything, any term in that contract, guess what? If there's something coming down and there's a decision to make, you're on your own, no matter what they tell you. In fact, they may throw up smoke, employ theater. They may even, mislead you, hopefully legally mislead you, to get you to agree to something. The biggest issue we see when there is no representation for the seller and the seller is assuming the buyer agent is working for them, is when something happens and the buyer agent implies to you, the seller, that this is how it is. This is normal. This is not to be questioned. And we know better. We know when to push back. I'll give you a great example. When a low appraisal comes in, 99% of the time, the buyer agent and the lender are both going to let you, the seller, believe, in fact, they may go out of their way to make you believe, that your only choice is to sign an addendum lowering the price to the new appraised price. Well, they obviously haven't checked out my low appraisal playbook. They hate this. So we know better. We know that you can fight back. You can appeal that appraisal. And it doesn't work a lot, but it does work. And it's worth the calories to give it a try, because during that process, we do a whole bunch of other things to try to protect your money so that you don't take a bath because of a low appraisal. We could even get you out of that deal, because depending on what type of appraisal it is, it might just go straight in the garbage, never to be discussed again by any other buyer. Even if we get it under contract the next day, I don't have to tell anybody about that previous appraisal in most cases. So we did a low appraisal episode. I don't know when, but it's back there in the annals of our library somewhere, and you should check it out. In short, all the decisions when you're working with only buyer agent type people or buyer's camp type people are going to go to the buyer, because everyone connected with the deal works for the buyer. So what's the fix? The fix is that the seller, you must remain your own quarterback at that point. Assume that whatever that person is telling you at worst is not in your best interest, and at best is neutral. It's not necessarily advocating for you. Or if you're in Ohio, you should just hire us, and let us help you, because we do a lot of spot negotiation for people. Just because you see a whole package fee on my website doesn't mean that's what you are into. Depending on where you are in the process, you can hook us up just to help you with an offer or help you with a low appraisal. We've got services like that out there. And you just contact us, book a free call with us, tell me the situation, and we'll go from there. But anyway, the other thing you can do is hire an attorney. Just get somebody who's familiar with residential real estate. Don't get the attorney who specializes in everything, because when you specialize in everything, you specialize in nothing. So you want somebody who is good at negotiating residential real estate contracts. Not that they can't all do it, but there are some nuances that go with thousands of deals. So that's who you want. But never, ever assume that the buyer's camp is out to protect you or do anything that will help you if it hurts them or their buyers, because it won't happen. Home sellers, this episode of Talking Realty is brought to you by our friends at Associates Title. This team is shaking things up by focusing on what truly matters, putting you, the customer, first. Whether you're buying or selling or investing, whether you're for sale by owner, whether you're working with a realtor, doesn't matter. They've got your back with incredible cost savings and the latest technology to streamline the process. Their secure online portal keeps everyone in the loop, from buyers and sellers to lenders to agents, all while keeping your data safe and communication crystal clear. If you're getting ready to make a move, don't underestimate the importance of having a great title company in your corner. Check them out today at associatestitleinc.com or call my friend Ryan Phillips at 614-419-2418. Remember, they're not just in Ohio, they're in a lot of states. So give them a call, but do not leave your title company choice to chance. And definitely don't let the buyer or their agent make that choice for you. All right, back to the show. Okay, let's get to our last mistake for today, and that is failing to negotiate the buyer agent commission correctly. Most sellers still assume that the buyer agent commission is somehow fixed or standard. So we have to keep talking about this, because clearly someone else is doing a better job of making sellers believe that the buyer agent commission is somehow fixed or standardized. Most sellers also assume that they have to pay it and that it cannot be changed. That not only is it stuck at this horrible 3% level, but it's also something they have to pay, because that's what everybody else around you wants you to believe. And they're more than happy to let you continue to do that. Most sellers don't realize that it is 100% negotiable. Now, it's always been 100% negotiable, but especially after the lawsuits in 2024, where a lot of stuff changed. I won't get into that here. In fact, if you want to know more, look in the show notes. I'll link to our lawsuit site. If you go to ohiomlsflatfee.com/NAR, you will find everything there, all content related to that lawsuit. But anyway, most sellers don't realize that happened, and much less understand all the reasons it happened, and then more importantly, what it means going forward. Most sellers also don't realize that negotiating it the wrong way or at the wrong time can cost you showings, cost you offers, or cost you an awful lot of money. But we did a whole episode on the art of the counteroffer where I deep dive how to counter a commission. But here's the main lesson: is if anyone asks you, this is usually before showings or maybe right before an offer, but many, many times the agent will contact you, the buyer's agent will contact you, and they will say, hey, are you paying a buyer agent commission? And the answer is always yes. Okay, the answer is always yes. I'm happy to negotiate a commission during the offer. If they ask how much, which sometimes they do, here's what you say. You know what? Put in whatever you like, but naturally, it will depend on the rest of the offer terms and any other offers we're considering. I'll slow that down for you, but if the buyer agent follows up their question about are you paying a commission with how much of a commission, you can say, you can put in whatever you like, but naturally, it will depend on the rest of the offer terms and any other offers we're considering. Now, there's a ton of psychology behind that line, but if you use it, you're on safe ground. But keep the playing field very wide open for all buyers, because if you start trying to negotiate this, first of all, before you've even had a showing, it's just pointless, because if the buyer doesn't like the house, you've wasted your breath. And if you said anything other than, yes, absolutely, we would be happy to pay a commission, if that agent or any of their fellow agents in the office are talking about your property and you've told them you aren't paying a commission or you're only paying X dollars, you can expect the number of showings from that office and anybody else they talk to go down dramatically, because agents, they're path of least resistance. We all are, right? And if you've already said, hey, I'm not paying a commission, they know that means they have to fight for it in the offer or directly with their client. That's not a fun day for a buyer agent. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying you don't need to worry about that right now. You don't need to worry about that buyer agent commission until you see the offer. That's when you worry about it. But talking about it, pre-negotiating it now makes no sense. This would be like them saying, hey, what's the lowest you'll take? Now, if you answer that question, I'm going to slap your hand, virtually speaking. What you should say is, naturally, it will depend on the rest of the offer terms and any other offers we're considering, right? You don't negotiate any single term in a vacuum. The price, none of it. When do you want to close? Oh, well, no, stop. Naturally, that will depend on the rest of the offer terms. And right, because if they offer you $10 million, but they want you out in a week, I'll bet you could pull it off. Just saying. You don't know whether you would or you wouldn't until you see the rest of the offer terms. And by the way, all the other offers that are sitting there. Because what may seem reasonable today might look ridiculous if you have 5 other offers that dwarf what they're asking. So now you've already told them you'll do this, but then you get 5 other offers that have no commission or have a really great price or have a really great closing and possession date that line up. It's your dream offer. It's beyond your dream offer. And now you've already told this agent that you'll do such and such. Now you have to go back to them. All right. Now, maybe they would have come up. Maybe they would have exceeded the other offers, but you've set yourself up for a bad conversation first. Well, you promised me this. You're negotiating in bad faith. Ugh. Okay, so just stop answering these questions. And last thing you negotiate is the buyer agent commission, and you always do it in writing. You never do it verbally by email. I know that's in writing, but you know what I mean. I want it signed on a counter. Negotiate after the buyer tops out on price, and then use options if you hit a standstill. And by options, I mean you'll go back to them and say, listen, I'll do this, this, and this, or I'll do this, this, and this, and give you your commission. So you can give them an A-B choice, but you do it in writing. You put it on a counter offer A, counter offer B, and you send it to them written, signed on a actual document so that it has to be presented to the buyer. Now this matters because you need more buyers at the table, and having agents avoid you because of your commission discussion prematurely, I might add, the only thing you can do is hurt yourself unless you say what I'm telling you to say, which is absolutely be happy to pay a buyer's commission. How much? Well, naturally, that's going to depend on the rest of the offer terms and all the other offers we're looking at that time. See, rolls right off the tongue. Nice and easy. So you don't have to be stubborn, but you also don't have to roll over. And the thing to keep in mind is that commission is leverage, and painting this tantalizing picture that they can have their whole commission if they work with you. All right, so let's run through these again. Prep matters because first impressions are lasting impressions. And when you prep correctly, you smooth the path through showings, through negotiations, through inspections, appraisals. But the more prep you do and the more amazing prep you do before you put it on the market, the smoother the road is all the way, the smoother and shorter and more profitable that road is all the way to closing. Control your deal. This is mistake number 2, letting the buyer's camp help you. Don't outsource protection. Don't outsource representation or cheap out on your representation. Well, they'll do it for free. So will the other guy's attorney in your lawsuit. They'll let you go unrepresented for free. But as they say, attorney who represents himself has a fool for a client, something like that. Same here. All right. You're already paying them. I hear that we're already paying them a commission. Okay. Well, that doesn't mean they're working for you. In fact, they're working against you. How crazy is that? But anyway, third, commission strategy matters more than the commission amount. Timing, format, actual language, what you say, when you say it, how you say it, greatly matters during this very delicate negotiation. And you're going to have this conversation, by the way, so you might as well be fully prepared with best practices. Okay, I didn't make this stuff up. This is stuff we tried over and over and tweaked and tested until we got it to where we want it, that it's very, very effective now. But when you avoid these 3 mistakes, you'll sell faster, you'll sell cleaner, and you're much more likely to get to the closing table with fewer scars and a lot more money. And with that, I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you learned a little something or maybe had a little bit of fun. The Talking Realty podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Property Group. a family-owned company where we sell homes for a low, flat fee. If you've got a question, you've got a guest, or a topic that you'd like to see in a future episode, I would love to hear from you. Just head to talkingrealty.com and say hello. Until next time, keep making smart moves in your real estate journey. For the Ohio Property Group, this is Glen Witten signing off. And remember, you can sell it. We can help.